Okay, we're learning for Shlema for Tzvi David ben Sarah, and today's shir is given Le'ilu Nishmas Yosef ben Shimshon HaKohen. This is Lenny Press's grandfather. Lenny Press's grandfather, who was also known as Joe Katz. He was the proprietor of the Lake House Hotel, as the sign said when you drove up. The Lake House Hotel, Joe Katz, proprietor. I don't know which yard site it is. He's nifty in his 90s, and today is his yard site. So, okay, new parak. Again, different than the previous prakim. This parak is more definitive in nature. It's going to define when you sell something. This parak and the ongoing prakim, when you buy something, what's included in the sale. Now we know when you buy something, you buy a house. You have lawyers, and you're very, 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 very specific. Exactly, you know that you got to cover your eyes, cross your T's, and dot your I's. Everything has to be covered. So these are cases over here where it's not so clear. And so Stam is like, what exactly is included in the sale? So it's a bit technical in terms of understanding, but I think you get the general idea. So the Mishnah says, you're selling it by a stam. The Rashbam says stam. In other words, you sell a house, and you're not going ahead and giving all the specifics. You're selling it stam. Leimachor yitzia. You're not selling the yitzia. Now, yitzia, I was vague about it yesterday. It seems to be a discussion. Is it an annex to the house? Is it an extension to the house? But needless to say, it's not part of the house itself. It's not within the house. It's out of the house. However, its usage is similar to the house. It's a separate structure, but the use is similar to the uses of the house. The tashmish of the Yitzia would be similar to the tashmish what are you using a house for. So it is a separate structure. And the fact that it's separate, that's why it's not going to be part of the sale, despite the fact the commonality is you use it for the same purpose. Even if this structure is open to the house, in other words, you have direct access to it, and you're using it for the same purpose, since it's an extension rather than part and parcel of the house itself, it's not part of the sale. Nor is part of the sale, nor is part of the sale a separate room within the house. Now, here you'll say, how could you tell me that this is not like the Yitzia, this is part of the house. However, this room is a machsan. This is what we call storage. It's a room used for storage, your chafetzim, your different things. So since it's not the same tashmish as the house, it's not included in the sale. So it's very interesting. You have two things not included in the sale, but for two totally different reasons. The Yitzia is not included in the sale, despite the commonality of usage. It's not in the sale because it's an extension, not part of the house. The cheder, despite the fact that it's part of the house, it's distinct, not part of the sale, because its usage is not the same usage of the house. You're using it for storage, not for living. In addition, now we know from our sojourn through Shas, we're familiar with that. The roof was used; it was a flat roof, and was used for different purposes. Right? In Erevin, we spoke about the delineation of the roofs and selling, going from chutzah to chutzah, from rooftop to rooftop. So we said that, let's say this rooftop, it has a mica, it has a fence around it. That would not be what? Would not be part of the sale. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Pesach, if on the Gag you had an opening that had a tzuras Pesach, which means it had two boards going up and something going across the top, connected at the top. That would be enough to make it what? An independent property. So the Mishnah tells us, and we're going to concentrate the first part of the daf on defining what a yitzia is, that in this case, where you have these extensions, or something that's part of the house and not used, or a roof that's a separate entity because it has what? A fence around it, Yitfachim, or like Rabbi Yehuda, Tzuras Pesach, it's not part of the sale. Again, in our minds, you sell a house, you kind of get a lot more than But if it's not written in the contract, you don't. We're going to see some very fascinating Gemara where it's possible for you to go ahead and buy a bar and you have no way of getting to the bar because you sold all the karka around it. Again, we've been with Rabbi Kiva as Meicher Bayin Yafi, Meicher. Again, we're going to get introduced to Talmudic sales. Again, exactly what's in, what's not. But this is a Meicher Stam, and not including this is what are these things. Now the Gemara goes to define Ma Yitzia. When you say this Yitzia, this extension, what is it? We know one thing, fellas, it's not part of the sale. We just don't know what it is, right? We know that it's not part of the sale, we just don't know what it is. So Hacha, here, they mutargim, and I guess in Bavel they were mutargim after. They were mutargim and after, and it's very interesting. If you look at the Gemara, if the Rashbam says after, and it says afterman, and this is for the person over here who cares very much for words and tends to go off on a tangent. I won't tell you who he is, but he does. He's smiling right now. And if you look at Loyas Rashi, if you have, again, the modern Shasim have the Rashi's Loazim. Look at he teaches the per Yitzia, he teaches it an appendage. He teaches the Yitzia as an appendage. That's the source of the word appendage. Fascinating. That's where it comes from. So an after will be an appendage to the house. It will be an extension to the house, but not part and parcel of the house itself. You see the old French word where our word comes from, appendage. Very geschmack.
The word of the Rashbam sounds like apartment.
Yeah, it sounds similar to that, right? Apartment, right? It sounds like apartment. Binyan namuch, but like continues the Rashbam Ravavi. Binyan namuch, it's a small building, a low building. Eitzel habayis mitzidoi. So in our translation of apartment, it would not be an apartment. It would be a side or a back shed, similar to a shed on the back of the house or the side of the house, even if it's open directly to the house. Picture a house with a garage next to it, and you park your car and you can walk in from the garage into the house. That would be, I think, a very good sushtel. It's not part and parcel of the house, it's an appendage to the house, but it's connected to the house. Now, since it's not exactly part of the house. It's an appendage to the house, therefore it's not part of the sale. So according to here in Bavel, after meant what? After means an appendage. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Bitka Chalila. Right. Now, what is Bitka Chalila? Says Rashbam. Right. Bitka Chalila is Ihunami Kimin after. It's similar to an after. Samich Labayas next to the house. El Shasoy Chaloinis Chaloinis Linoi. It's made with multiple windows for aesthetic's sake. It should be what? It should be nice. And he says Ludrish Balaz. And over here, it didn't make sense to me. He says Achsadra. What we notice an Achsadra portico. So therefore, V'hainu Lashon Chalila al Shem Shekaisel of Cholim. It's called Chalila because they're chalol. The walls are empty because there's no mass to them since they're filled in by windows. So we have two pshatim in what it is. It's either an extension right to the house or an extension to the house that is multiple windows. Leman da'ama after loy mizdavin. Like the man da'ama says after you didn't sell kol shekain bitka chalila. In other words, it's much more sfaridic to say that the after is part of the house than the bitka chalila, right? Because its whole usage is not whatsoever. It's just lenoi. It's just for aesthetic's sake. However, the mandiyama bitka chalila, like the mandiyama that the yitzia is this beautiful kind of portico situation, that's not part of the sale. Al after, which is connected to the house and is more shaykhs to the usage, the same usage, that would be a good sale. So again, depending on the translation, whether it's after bit chalila. So bottom line is the yitzia is some kind of extension. Now the Gemara goes and digresses now to tell us that Yitzia has three different names used by the Beis HaMikdash of Shlomo and the future Beis HaMikdash. The third Beis HaMikdash is described in the Navi Yecheskel. So let's do that. It's pretty straightforward. Ma Yitzia. Okay, we said, says the Gemara. Tani Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef taught Shalosh Shemos. There are three names. Yitzia has three names from the Pesukim. Yitzia, Selah, and Ta. It could be Yitzia, Selah, and Ta. Now, Rabbi Yosef is the one who told us it's Bitka Chalila. He's the one who told us it's a portico that has chalonis on it. So what does he mean over here? It has three names. So if you look at the top Tosfos, it's important. Hamochras Abayis, Tani Rabbi Yosef, Gimel Shemus Yeshla, Yitzia, Selah, V'ta. A Yitzia de Krokai, says Tosfos, it's not going on the Yitzia of our Mishnah. He explained what Yitzia of the Mishnah is. It's Bitka Chalila. It's this window portico. That's Rabbi Yosef. When it says over here to define the three, he's coming to explain the Psukim. When the Psukim use the Lashon, they use three different Lashonis. They use Lashon of Yitzia, the Lashon of Selah, the Lashon of Ta. The Masnisan Kvar Pirush of Yosef Kufa, Davi Bitka Chalila. Because if it's going on the Mishnah, he already explained it. He explained it means it's some type of window structure. And we don't find Yitzia in the Beis Hamikdash in conjunction with windows. So clearly, Rabbi Yosef now is coming to explain the lashon of Yitzia regarding the Beis Hamikdash rather than the explanation of a Mishnah, which he gave clearly to mean a bunch of windows. That's good. Okay, says the Gemara. Right, in the Beis Hamikdash, Yitzia Tzelah Ta, Yitzia Dechsiv. It says this is by the binyan of Shlomo. It says what? It says Hayitzia Tachtaina, the lower Yitzia is Chamesh Ba'ama Rachba. It was 5 amas wide, and that's how you see it's called Yitzia. Selah, it's called Selah. Now, Selah, this already is in Yecheskel. The Nabi is telling us Yecheskel, the third Beis Hamikdash. And here, the Yitzia is called Selah. Dichsiv, it says, V'hatzlois Selah, El Selah Sholosh Ushloishim Pamim. It's 33 times there. Basically, fellas, there was 4 of these things in the north, 5 in the north, 5 in the south, and 1 in the west. East was open. So there were 5 in the north, 5 in the west, 5 in the south, and 1 in the west, a total of 11, and there were 3 levels, so 11 times 3 is 33. Again, it's not so important. We just need a definition that it's called Selah, right? I just explained the Lashon 33. 5 north, 5 south is 10, 1 in the west is 11, 3 is 33. Okay, so we see Lashon Yagir, the Lashon of Selah, and the Chein Nikra Ta, it's also called a Ta, the Chsiv, right? V'hata kana echad oirech, v'kana echad roichiv. And the Ta, literally the cell, is a measurement of roichiv ubein hatzlayim chamesh amas. Okay, so that's how you know it's called a Ta. Be by saying mechacha, you want to know it's called Ka. Another source for calling a Ta. Kaisel hachelo, the thickness of the kaisel of the heichal, sheish amas. V'ata atzmai, and the empty space of the chamber was 6 amas. And kaisel hata, and the thickness of the ta was chamesh amas, was 5. Bottom line is, from a lashon of a mishnah, you see it's called a ta. So again, what did we do so far today? We explained that Yitzia, that it could machloikus, whether it's an extension to the house, or a bunch of extension of noila windows. We went ahead and defined the lashon by the Beis Hamikdash. When it says lashon Yitzia, it could be Yitzia, it could be Tzelah, it could be ta. That's all we did so far. Now, Mazutra. The Mishnah said, if you sell a bias, you didn't sell the Yitzia. Now, how big does that extension have to be considered separate part of the sale? In other words, if it's small enough, is it bottled to the house or not? On that says Mazutra, V'hu arba amis. Again, we spoke out yesterday, right? And when we did 2 days ago, in order a makam choshev is dalet amis by dalet amos. So if this Yitzia is less than dalet amos, if this Yitzia is less than dalet amos, loit Mazutra, then what? It's part of the sale. When did we say Yitzia is not part of the sale? When it's a makam choshev b'fnei atzma, it's dalet by dalet. But if it's less than that, then it's part of the sale. Just have to excuse myself. Okay, so Mazutra qualifies the Mishnah that it's a place that it has to be more than 4 by 4 or 4 by 4. Amalei Ravina Mazutra. Lididach, according to you, the Armit Adahabi Arba Amis, Elamiat Gabe Bar. So you're selling a house now, and in the house, guys, they used to have their water source was what? Was a cistern, a water cistern. We call it a pit. So when we think of a pit, we think of Baba Kama fame, right? Having a pit in Rabim and causing a takala. But we're speaking about people digging boirois, shichin, ma'arois. These are places to store water. So they would have in their houses water. Now, if you go ahead and sell the house, is the water bar part of the sale? So the Gabi bar, the nan. Loya, if you sell a house, you didn't sell loya sabar, loya sadus. It's also some type of place for the water. Afa pisha kosav loy oimka veroima. Even though you wrote, I'm selling you the house, oimka to its depths, veroima to its heights. Hachanami, you're going to tell me ihavi arba amis in iloi loy. So in other words, using our rule of thumb, if you sell a house, the Yitzhak is not part of it when it's more than 4. When you sell a house, the bar is not part of it. What? When it's more than 4. But less than that, it would be part of the sale. Right? That's the analogy. You'd see it's a bar, but 1 second, no bar is ever as big as 4 amis. And yet it says it's not part of the sale. Again, what's your rule? Ravina said to Mazutra, you need this Yitzhak to be more than 4 amis or above to not be part of the sale. Less than that, it'll be bottle. But by bar, if you're going to tell me that, it makes no sense. A bar is never 4 amis. And since it's never 4 amis, and the Mishnah says it's not part of the sale, so you see, even less than 4, it's not part of the sale. So why by Yitzhak can you say that less than 4 is part of the sale? That's the kasha. On that, the Gemara Vazutra answers Ravina, Hachi Hashta. What are you talking? How now? Hasam over there by bar. Hatashmisha l'chud, hatashmisha l'chud. The house is made to live in. The bar is made for water. It's 2 separate tashmishin. So regardless of its size, it's not part of the sale. You sold the base dira. You didn't sell what? A water source. Hacha, however, by the yitzia, right? By the yitzia and by the bar and by the house, chada tashmishahi. As I spoke out in the Mishnah, they're the same usage. They're using for living space. The chesaron of the Yitzhak, fellas, is it's an extension of the house and not the house, but the tashmish of it is the same. So, therefore, ihavi dalad amis choshev, it's choshev by itself to be an extension. The loy, then it's not choshev, loy choshev, and it's bottled to the house. So, you have to look at every single item. You can't just say a carte blanche statement, everything that's less than 4 is bottled. It's not true. It's not true. I admit to you, says Matzrucha to Ravina, if I sell a house, the bar is not part of the sale. The bar is less than 4. It's not part of the sale because I sold you a house, which is a total different tashmish than a water pit. Masha Enkein, a yitzia and a house, which are both for living purposes. It's the same tashmish. If it's less than 4, it's taka bottle to the house. If it's more than 4, then that's the pshat in the Mishnah. So now, when you go up to the Mishnah and says Hamoicher Sabai Stam Lo Yimacha Yitzia, you know what it means? As long as it's what? More than 4 amis. Bazutra's pshat remains in the Mishnah, but if it's less than 4 amis, it will be bottle and part of the sale. It will be bottle and will be part of the sale. Now we said V'loyas Acheder Shelifnim Himenu. Now we said just to speak out. Again, we picture, it's hard sometimes when the Mishnah talks about things and you visualize it in English, and what you visualize, it doesn't make any sense. If I would tell you, I'm selling you a house and the room is not part of the house, you'd all look at me and say, what are you drinking? Like, what are you talking about? A house is made up of rooms, right? We're thinking bedrooms and dining rooms and living rooms and we're speaking about living space. So what do you mean it's not part of it? So, Ein Achinami, it's part of the house. But the usage of it, and we're speaking about over here, is the machsan. We're speaking about an area that is part of the house, but it's not used for what? For living in. That's the cheder over here that we're talking about. That's the cheder we're talking about. Now, here's the question. What would you think is more part of the house? A yitzia, an extension, which has the same usage, versus a cheder, which is part of the house, but a different usage. And on both we said it's not part of the sale. Fred the Gemara Kasha. Hashta, now you're telling me Yitzia, even though they have the same purpose. But it's not part of the sale. Loy miznavin cheder, a room that's used for storage. Boy, do you have to tell me on the base that it's not part of the sale? In other words, it seems to be more of a svara to say that if it's the same usage, it's more part of the sale than if it's the same house. In svara, I would say the opposite. But again, this is what the Gemara is assuming, that when you're selling a house, you're selling tashmish, you're selling the purpose of it. So I'm selling the purpose of the house. You'd see it has much more shaykhs to the sale than a cheder that's used for storage has shaykhs to the sale. So it seems unnecessary to tell me that a cheder is not part of the sale. Madoch Yitzi is not part of the sale, despite it being the same usage. Certainly cheder, which is a different usage, is not part of the sale. It says that on the Amid Beis, like Tzricha, you got to still tell me that the cheder is not part of the sale. The Afagav, the Mitzrolei Matzrei Abroi, even though what? I included it what in the dimensions. Okay, we have to see Rashba. It was not necessary. It's necessary to tell you didn't sell the cheder. Ella, in a situation, kigoin, the meitza loy moicher loy keach bishtar mechira, the seller to the buyer delineated in the star of the sale, meitzorim chitzoinim shechutz l'cheder. He went ahead and he demarcated in the sale the dimensions, and within the dimensions is included the cheder. The salkadait chaminon macher es cheder. Since you would think that since the room is encapsulated within the demarcation that he gave, you would think it's part of the sale. It's part of the boundaries he set. So why is he part of the demarcated lines? The kosvei besa shel ploni min amayriv meitzarim hirchavloi. And why did he write it? Is because he wanted to go ahead and give meitzarim. It's very important to see the next Rashbam. Kid Rav Nachman shlo yad lefarish v'loy mecheder shalihi mima ravei shel bayis. The ain't say meitzah hanikar. It's not recognizable in Shia ear. The hilkach kosav meitzarim hanikarim. Why would a person go ahead and delineate things? Because you wanted something recognizable to people. If you say, I'm selling you this, and people don't recognize it, it doesn't mean anything. So you might go ahead and give, I'm selling you a house that is contained within the candy store over here, the grocery store over here, the bakery over here, and the wine store over here. And really, you're really doing that because you want to go ahead and give an idea of what the boundaries are. But it doesn't mean that since the cheder is inside of it, that it's included part of the sale. You gave those dimensions. I gave the dimensions because you had to know what the house was. You had to know the lot size, you know exactly what it is. But not necessary to say that that thing is part. In other words, it's like a chutzner. Anything that's within this delineated area is part of the sale. Like you'd say, oh, 1 second, I'm selling you this lot size, this 40 by 100 that's on the west of, you go, if you bought a house, you have the title, you have exactly the dimensions. According to the Gemara, giving the dimensions is only to make it recognizable what he's selling, but not necessarily to tell me everything he's selling. That's the best lashon. Not to tell me, it's to tell me what he's selling, but not to tell me exactly what he's selling. So therefore, you would have thought the chodar einachinami, since it's within those dimensions, it's telling me that it's part of the sale. Kemash malon the Mishnah, no, it's not part of the sale. Why? Because it's used for storage and not for living. Despite the fact it's inside was given what to delineate exactly what the area was, what the thing was. Now, and this is Rav Nachman's din, and now we're going to spend time on Rav Nachman's din. So again, one more time. Again, this seems to be a little strange to us because something's in a house, it's part of the house. But again, according to the biblical times, when you sold the house stam, again, we probably, when we sell a house, we include everything, it spells it out. Included is blank, 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 right? When you sell the house, you get the fridge, you get the oven, you get the appliances, and we spell out things. So again, this is, but you sold the house stam. If you sell a house stam, the cheder is not part of it. That's obvious. If the Yitzia, which has the same ishtamshus, is not part of it, the Cheder, which has a totally different ishtamshus because it's used for storage, is not part of it. Kamash Malon, like Rav Nachman, that the Chiddush over here is, despite the fact that this Cheder is falling within the parameters of demarcation that was stated in the Shtar, nonetheless, it's not part of the sale. Why is that? Why did he demarcate these things in the first place? Because he had to go ahead and give recognizable dimensions exactly what is the house, but not exactly what's in the house as part of the sale. So therefore, like tzricha, top line, the afagav the meitzla mitzri abroi, he's giving outside boundaries. Kid Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Ravua, Hamocha bayis lechaveiroi, bebir gedoyla. Bir gedoyla is an apartment building, fellas. So you're in apartment 1A, and you're going ahead and you're buying what? So you're standing in apartment 1A, and the guy sells you a bias. He sells you pashtus, he's selling you 1A. Even though he's delineating outside boundaries, all he did was he gave the meitzarim to make it more recognizable, right? But he wasn't selling the whole apartment building to you. So in other words, I'm in apartment 1A, and when he demarcates everything, he's demarcating the whole apartment building. You only get apartment 1A. Why did demarcate the apartment building? That you should know what the dimensions are. Says the Gemara, Hechidami, what exactly is the case? If a house is called a house, ulabira bira, an apartment building is called an apartment building. Pshita bias zavanle, bira le zavanle. What's the chiddush over here? If I'm selling you, apartment 1A is called apartment 1A, and apartment building is called apartment building. So I'm not. So what's the chiddush? That you only get apartment 1A? Bias is bias, and bira is bira. Ella, you know what, fellas? The labira nami correlate bias. They also call the apartment building what? 1A. In other words, they call it a house. It's called a house. So cool is zavanle. If that's the case, then maybe he sold the whole thing. So if the apartment building is called, if the whole apartment building is called 1A, then you sold the whole thing. So Mimanav Shach, the Gemara wants to know, if it's called an apartment building and not 1A, then you only bought 1A, it's Pashit. And if it's called 1A, then you bought the whole thing. Says Gemara like Tzricha, the Ruba Korele bias. Most people call 1A 1A, Labira Bira, and call apartment building. But Ika Nami de Labira Korele bias. However, there are those people that call apartment building 1A. So Madutema Kula Zavanle, I might think, since there are people who do call apartment building 1A, apartment building, Kamash Malon, that what? No, you only get apartment 1A. Why? With the Havilele Michtav, when you should have written, right? The law should, when you should have written, Veloy Shairis is Vin Elon, I did not leave over anything in this sale, Klum Veloy Kasav. I did not leave over anything in this sale. In other words, the sale is complete. Shemamina Shiure Shiire. In other words, since there are people who call the whole apartment building 1A, you should have written, if you wanted to buy the whole building, I did not leave over anything in the sale. And that wouldn't be inclusive. Since you did not write that, it's only limited to 1A, despite the fact that there are people who call 1A the apartment building. The Chiddush of Rav Nachman, again, is why do you go ahead and delineate? Because of, to make it a place that is what? Is recognizable. Now, the same halacha by a sadeh. Shmamino Shir Shiari, he left over the rest of the apartment building and only included was what? Was apartment 1A. Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Ravua, if someone sells a field to his friend, the bika gedoyla in a big valley. So when you sell fields, I got a bunch of fields. Just like the apartment building, one apartment 1A was one of many apartments. So too in a field and in bika, a sada is many sadas. So there's many places over here in this field, right? There's many places over here. Even though he's giving outside demarcations, he went ahead and he just was marchiv, he added on simply to make it more recognizable. Hechidami, what exactly is the case? Again, the same dialogue as we had by a house. If they call a field in a valley, pshita, it's pashit, that why he only sold him a sada zavanle, bika le zavanle. Call it what it is. And are you going to tell me that everyone calls a bika sadeh? Then kula zavanle. So in other words, go after his lashon. If a field is a field and a valley is a valley, he only sold him a field. If a field is called a valley, then he saw them a valley. Like tzricha dikalis the lesada kar lesada lebika kar bika. There are those who call it sada bika bika. You know, there are those who call apartment 1A apartment building, so on and so forth. Bikanami de lebika kar lesada. Some other time a cool is up, and he sold the whole thing. Kamash Lon, with the Havle Lemichta, we should have written in the star, La Sheirosis Bizvina Elon Kadme Klum. I didn't leave over anything. And the meaning the sale is Hakol Bakol Mikol, V'loi Kosavle, and he did not write that. Shmamina, Shiri Shari left over the rest of the Bika, and he only wrote the field. And so now we have two cases telling me the same thing. Rav Nachman's din. That's Rav Nachman's din. Even though you went ahead and demarcated something, the fact that you demarcated something for recognizable landmarks does not go ahead and constitute that anything that's found within it is part of the sale. And therefore, the cheder, even though it's part of the house and it was part of the lines of demarcation, it's not like kinyan chutzner where you acquire it. It was never sold to you. Why was it never sold to you? Because you bought a house, you didn't buy a storage place. Good. Where do you see Rav Nachman's din? We saw it in two venues. We saw it by house and an apartment building and a sada in a bika. And we said the same thing, that some people called it were interchangeable. And in both cases, therefore, since you didn't write the lashon that I didn't leave over anything, in fact, you did leave over something. Why did you leave over? In the sada, you left over the rest of the bika. In the bias, you left over the rest of the apartments. Good. Baruch Hashem, says the Gemara. But however, you need to tell me both venues. You need to tell me by sada, and you need to tell me by bias. The ashminan bias, if you just tell me by bias, mishum the tashmisha l'chud, the tashmisha l'chud. Now, in this apartment building, if you walk into them, many fine apartments, you walk in, fellas, there's a nice area in front, right? And there's like usually a little waterfall, maybe a fake fireplace, a nice area where people can come together and meet. So that's when we call the apartment building, that's the purpose of that area. The apartment itself was for living. So therefore, it's very good to tell me, if you bought a bias, you didn't go ahead and sell this. You know why? Because they're two separate tashmishin. The purpose of them is both totally different. One, the bias, 1A is to live in, and the apartment building is to spazier or just to meet friends and socialize. Two totally different areas. And therefore, I'd say it's a separate sale. And therefore, it's not included in it. Avol bika de kula chada tashmishahi. In a valley, a bunch of fields. Each one is for the same purpose, the purpose of Zriya. Ema kula zavinle, since there are people who call a bika a sada, I would think when he sold him the sada, it's all one tashmishin that he sold him the whole valley. The ashminan bika, and if you tell me bika, mishum delay havile, lememsale, he didn't have to go ahead and give such specific boundaries. We'll see the Rashbam in a second. I will bias the Havila Meitzele Kula. So I think when he didn't have to, and he did, he should have gone ahead and given boundaries, and he didn't. I would say he sells all things at Tzricha. Command Oslo Hod Amar Av Mari, the Bashmuel, Ishmei Dabaya, Haiman, the Masule Midi, the Chave, someone sells something to his friend, Tzarech Lemichtav, he has to write to him, L'Sheirasi Bizvini Olin Kadin Klum, I didn't leave over anything. Kiman, Rav Nachman, like Rav Nachman. Like Rav Nachman. Okay, let's see Rashbam over here. Rav Nachman, let's go. Rav Nachman, D'lo yamin hachi. K'mashal Rav Nachman, you don't say this. Mishum the havilei lemichdiv lemoicher. He should have written to the moicher. L'sheirosis bizvini olin. I didn't leave over anything. Shemitoich arba hamitzorim kadmei klum. Shari kach tiknu chachamim lichtoiv. Yishvil sheyesh bnei adam shemachivim mitzorim. There are people who widen the boundaries in the Shtar Mechira, and they don't sell everything that's in there. Good, right? And he didn't write, I left over something. Shmami, know that you did leave over something. Again, that's our Mishnah, guys. That's our Mishnah. According to Rav Nachman, you sold a house, there was a cheder in the house, you demarcated exactly the boundaries of the house. Nonetheless, there was a shear. What was that shear? The room used for storage. Bika Gedoyla, you have now a sada and a Bika Gedoyla. Sheyesh ba sades harbe, many fields. Behin shaloi, they all belong to him. We're going shahaya oimid be'echem in asades. The guy standing in one of the fields, similar to the guy standing in apartment 1A. Va'amaloi sadesu ani meichalecha. I'm selling you the sada. Now, there's a big kasha, guys. Before we get to the next piece, it's very pashut. Why don't we just see how much money he paid? Wouldn't the amount of money paid tell us how much real estate he bought? I'm buying one field. I assume it goes for X amount of money. There's 10 fields there, 10 times as much. So how come we can't use money as to be machriya what exactly he bought? Says the Rashbam, "V'hadomim moidia leka l'meimar." And domim, you can't tell me what. Why? Loy gabe bira, not by a bira, v'loy gabe bika. The ein oina lekarkois. Going back to our Azov days, the din of overcharging, it doesn't go ahead and deal with sadais. It doesn't deal with houses attached to the ground. So this person could be getting ripped off royally. So therefore, you can't use money as a means. Therefore, you can't use money as a means. Okay, skip down to the next Rashbam. Lo havilei lemeitzer l'chud. You didn't have to go ahead. We said by bika, you didn't have to go ahead and delineate. He doesn't know where the sod is found. He has to increase the boundaries. The lichtayv soda Ruvain min hamizrach, the soda Shimon min hamayriv. That Ruvain's field is on the right, and his field is on the left. The chen lechol daled ruchos, all daled ruchos. Avagabe bira shasuye binyana mishunim zemizeh. Mashen came by a bira where everything's different. Bein beroichav, bein bayrach. Each apartment's different. Bein begoiva, whether it's its height, v'oive aksolim, the thickness of the walls. V'hoya yachol lemeitza v'lmichta v'oisei bayish asu kain. V'chem emizrach v'chem v'chol ruach v'ruach. V'loyasa kain iklenema the kulizavin sotzricha. In other words, by the house, right? Since it was mishun, it was totally different, right? You could have been more specific, and he wasn't more specific. Maybe he sold the whole thing. Mashain came by; it was necessary by the fields because since one field is very similar in all ways, right? And therefore, he should have. He didn't have to give such specific boundaries because they're all similar. Okay, we'll stop over here.